Well, hello everybody and welcome back to John's Workshop, and in this video we're going to be looking at the very important question of should I drag my file? So this is part of Ollie's Workshop's Advent series of videos that he does every year, and so what Ollie does is puts a video out every day through December between the 1st and the 24th. He's a complete lunatic, and that will only make sense to anybody else who's a video creator. And if, like me, you're also a video consumer, you'll think it's fantastic. So well done, Ollie. So this year Ollie's decided to try and share the load a little bit, and he's offered a few people out to pitch in, a few of the other creators, and give him a bit of a hand. So that's what this video's doing. It will be on Ollie's channel. I'll put something up on the screen up here somewhere for you. If you've not seen Ollie's channel before, go and check him out. Really interesting guy, does lots of interesting work. And if you're seeing this on Ollie's channel, Merry Christmas. So, moving on. So what aren't we covering? So in this video we're not going to cover all the different types of file you can get, the different geometries, the different shapes, the different sizes, the different methods of using them. We're not covering any of that stuff. There's loads and loads of information on the internet, on YouTube. You can go and look and research all that stuff if you want to. So what are we going to cover? Well, we're going to kind of look at the most controversial question, as it seemingly seems to be, in the engineering circles of should I drag my file backwards across my work? And there's a little sketch of what I'm talking about there at the bottom of the screen. And this really is probably one of the most controversial questions that I've come across in YouTube land, at least in terms of the comments, and everybody's got an opinion and that kind of thing. So I'm going to just try and debunk some of that and give you some of the good reasons why you should or shouldn't do that. So that's what we're covering. What we're not covering, I'm going to try and keep this fairly short, just in case you've got to this video by mistake and you thought it was about filing tax expenses and you've got no idea what I'm talking about. That's a file, and we're going to be talking all about the use of it. So without any more waffling, I'll grab a file and we'll go and start digging into what I've learnt through my apprenticeship and through my career and through my teachings and stuff from my early career. There's a couple of things that you need to think about when you're considering whether you drag cut a file or not. Okay, so let's deal with the most controversial part of this question set first. So here we've got a brand new file, never been used, albeit it's got some blobs of rust on it. We've got a high-speed steel end mill in my collet chuck and a piece of material in the vise, and we've got a new drill, brand new high-speed steel drill. Now, one thing all these three things have got in common is they're all high-speed steel in terms of the material they're made out of. And also, when you look at the cutting edges that are ground into, certainly these two, the drill and the end mill, the geometry of those cutting edges will be ever so similar to if you looked at the teeth of this file under a microscope. Almost identical in terms of the geometry, albeit on a much different scale and size. And again, they're made out of the same material. So if I got my brand new end mill out of my packet, and I switched my mill into reverse mode, running the cutter backwards, and I moved my tool up against my workpiece and just left it running there for 20 minutes and then stopped it, would I have done anything to this end mill? Yes, I would have blunted it, and I would have taken the sharp edges off the cutting edges without a shadow of a doubt. And that is no different to if I'd have done the same thing with the drill, and it's no different to if I had dragged my file backwards past a workpiece. It's the same thing. So I've even seen in one person's YouTube video, in one of the comments, somebody obviously has got a different opinion of this and actually suggested that dragging the file backwards over the work actually resharpened the cutting edges ready for your next forward cut so that you would take a good cut. I mean, just bonkers. It will not do that. It will take the cutting edge off. So should you file forwards and backwards all the time on the workpiece? The simple answer to that is it depends how deep your pockets are. So if you've got plenty of money and you can afford to keep buying brand new files, then by all means drag the file forwards and backwards across the workpiece. As simple as that. Your file will wear out quicker in the same way that the end mill will wear out quicker if I run it backwards against a piece of steel. Very, very simple. Simple laws of physics, and it's the same laws to all three things. It's no different. So despite what some of the hardcore engineering forums, I'm just going to say that, will tell you that your house will be infested by a plague of locusts and your second born child will be kicked out to the wolves, none of that will happen if you drag your file back past the workpiece. All that will happen is you will wear your file out quicker. Very, very simple. So all of the controversy and hype and difference of opinions, you can just ignore all of that. It's a very simple fact that if you drag a file across a workpiece, you're going to wear your teeth out quicker. Very, very simple. Now there is another very good reason why when you're taught to use a file in an apprenticeship like I was, and I'll give you an idea of my apprenticeship filing. It was a 2-week course, and what I will say is using, many people will think of a file as just a primitive hand tool and nowhere near as complicated as a milling machine or a center lathe or anything like that. You couldn't be more wrong. You need far more dexterity and far more hand-eye coordination to use one of these properly than you do to use a milling machine or a center lathe properly. And we're going to move to the bench and have a look at a piece of work in the vise and going to discuss around why that is. Okay, so we're at the bench. We've got our workpiece in the vise, and as I said at the start, we're not going into all the different ways you could use a file, such as draw filing, such as flat surface filing, such as edge breaking. There's so many different things you could do and so many different ways you need to be able to position your file to do some of that stuff. But what we are going to talk about is this dragging the file. So I'm kind of at the wrong angle here because of where the camera's positioned, but I'm just going to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So if you were, let's just for example say I've machined this face and I want to break the edge, and I want to break that quite accurately and not, it needs to not just take the burrs off because I'm going to do more machining. This is say a finished chamfer that I'm going to put on, and I'm going to use my file to do it rather than machining it. If I decide to do that, I cannot see what's happening underneath that file. I've got no idea what size of edge break I've put on there at all. And what you'll also notice is you tend to rock. I'm khaki-handed here. I'll change hands. You tend to rock, your file will tend to rock when you're going quick like that. Now, if you're using a file correctly, where you're going to file and lift off between each pass, which is how I was taught, you can see what every single file stroke has done. So you can be measuring, and this is what I was talking about, hand-eye coordination using a file. As you're working your way along this edge, if I'm lifting off after each pass, I can see what I've done, and I can see that I'm not digging in one place like I've just done there, and I've now got a very uneven chamfer because I couldn't see what I was actually doing with the file because it was hidden underneath the actual tool itself. So lifting off in between each pass gives you the opportunity to see what you've done and then correct. So if your file was digging in on the left or the right, or you were digging in too far forwards or too far this way with your angle, you're constantly correcting between each pass that you make, and that will lead you to a very nice uniform chamfer. If you're watching what you're doing, and I'm just going to level this out now. So I'm watching the chamfer. I'm finding that quite awkward because I'm actually working left-handed and I'm right-handed because the camera's in the way. But hopefully you get the idea. And that's no different to if I was, say, flat surfacing. a component with a file, you know, by dragging backwards and forwards, again I can't see what's happening, I can't see what my end result is. By lifting off in between each pass, I get the opportunity to look, correct, and before I go in for my next pass. So that really, for me, and it doesn't matter what type of file you're using, you could be using a needle file up into a sharp corner, you could be using a triangular file in a dovetail, you know, you could be using a round rat tail file in a radius. The same thing's true. The file will always obscure what you're doing with it, because the width of the file is the width of the file, so you cannot see what's happening underneath that tool because it's hidden by the tool itself. So by lifting off in between each pass, you get the opportunity to see, correct, before you go in for your next pass. So for using a file properly and for creating good geometry with a file, such as a nice neat chamfer or a nice flat face or whatever it is, or a nice sharp corner in a dovetail, you need to see what you're doing. And if you obscure your view with the file itself, you're never going to see until the minute you stop doing this and have a look and then go, oh dear, I've made a mess of that, because you couldn't see what was happening. So far more important to me, and this is how I was taught, is it's that view in between each pass, the opportunity to correct in between each pass. That's far more important than this, am I blunting my file by dragging it backwards and forwards? And we've already answered that question, yes you are. Now what I could be doing, and you know, I'm guilty of this, I was taught to do this properly, I'm absolutely guilty as charged. If I just want a quick deburr on here, I'll just do that. It's done in seconds. So I'm as guilty as other people of dragging a file. What I would say is, just think about how accurate you're trying to be with this hand tool. This isn't a primitive hand tool. It's used often like a primitive hand tool, but it's absolutely not. You can create some very, very accurate work with a file if you're using it properly, and you're improving your hand-eye coordination, and you're constantly feeding back what you're seeing into your hands for your next go forward. So that's probably it for this video. They're short little videos that Ollie does for his Advent series. I hope that that's just debunked. There's so much noise on YouTube about this dragging a file and locusts and second born children and all that kind of stuff. It's all nonsense. It's utter nonsense. So yes, you're going to blunt your file if you drag it. If it's an old dog-eared file like this one, I'm really not bothered about it, so I don't care. If it's a good file that I've paid a lot of money for, I'm going to treat it with respect and use it properly. It's as simple as that. Okay, we'll come back to the board and we'll close this video out. Well, there we go. That gets us to the end of this little video for Ollie. I hope you've all enjoyed that. Hopefully some people have found that useful and interesting. There might be something you've learnt there. That's the intention of most of my videos, is to try and pass some learning on. That's the only reason I do the whole YouTube thing. So hopefully that's given you a bit of food for thought. And if you're struggling to know what to put on that Christmas list, the all-important tool that you want for Christmas from your family, get them to buy you a decent set of files and go and have a play with them and use them a bit differently from the files that you've probably already got, would be my suggestion. There is a lot to learn in the use of a file and using a file properly and getting some really good work. You don't need a milling machine to do fancy work if you have got good file skills, so it's worthwhile practicing. So I hope I've done you proud there, Ollie, and I hope people have enjoyed that. Thank you all very, very much for watching. Thank you to the subscribers that subscribe both to Ollie's channel and to my channel, and much appreciated, and we'll catch you all very soon on another video when we'll be making something else.